Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today, I'm going to go over how you can create running totals in Power Query. So whether you want to create a running total for everything or just when a certain criteria is met, I'm going to show you how you can do it both ways. So for example, here, I've got dates, sales, sales reps, and location. And so first, I'm going to show you how we can create a running total for all of the sales, and then the sales by the sales rep as well. So it resets once you have a different sales rep. So first things first, I'm gonna get this into Power Query. So if I click on the data tab and hit from table or range, it's gonna select my data and I'm gonna load it into Power Query. Now, the one thing you're gonna need to do either before you put your data into Power Query or after you've loaded it is to sort your dates in ascending order. This is an important step because it ensures that that the running total is calculated properly. So right now I've got my dates already in order, but if I didn't, I could use this ascending button here. So I just select the entire column, hit ascending, and it'll sort it for me. And now what I can do is go to the Add Column tab and add an index column, which starts from 1. And this is why it's important to have the dates in ascending order, because as you can see, we're creating an index column, just a simple counter, essentially what it is. But this is necessary to be able to calculate the running total. And so next thing I'm going to do is still in the Add Column section, I'm going to select the Custom Column button. And so this is where I can actually create the formula to calculate my running total. So I'll call this running total. And for my formula, I'm just going to use the list.sum function, which, as the name suggests, is going to sum up a list. And for that list, I'm going to provide it with a list that uses the first end function, so the first number of items, right? So it turns the set of items, the list specifying how many items to return. With the help of the index function, it can specify that when we're on the first row, it's going to just provide the first value. And then the second row would be just the first 2. On the third row, just the first 3, and so on and so forth. So to reference this list, initially what I need to do is reference the step. So I'm going to put pound, and see the name of the step here is added index. Obviously, you can rename that to something else, but that's what I've referenced it in here. And within there, I'm going to reference the sales field because it's important that I'm referencing sales from my most recent step just to make sure that I'm getting the correct data. And then for my condition, I'm using the index field. And so I could also just double click it, but I'm just put it in this formula here, close it out. So that's what it looks like. So it's summing these items based on that list. And that list is just going to pick up the number of items up until that specific row as indicated with the index. So I'm going to press OK. And now it's created my running total. As you can see, it's incrementing properly from 100. It jumped by 150, so that I'd put it at 250, add another 200, or at 450, add another 250, or at 700, and so on. So it is calculating my running total easily. So that's a really easy way to just create a simple running total, and that's the first part of this video, just setting that piece up. The next part is going to be a little bit more complicated just because now we're going to want to create a condition. Like in this case, it's calculating the total regardless of the sales rep, regardless of the location. It's just strictly looking at the date. So to get this to work, what I'm going to do is start with creating a custom function that I can reuse. So to do this, what I'm going to do is click on the Home tab, and I'm going to go into my Advanced Editor button here. And now I'm going to copy all of this code. So I'm going to leave this table as it is. I'm just going to hit Control-C to copy all this. And then here, I'm going to right-click, New Query, and then just select a blank query is what I'm looking for here. And go to the Advanced Editor. And I'm going to paste that into here. Now, the one thing to be able to use this as a function, I need to set up the variable and the input that I'm going to use. So I'm going to say let the running total, I'm just going to name it that, is equal to x and X is just the name of my input. So this can be whatever you want. So it creates an arrow function. I'm just going to insert this just to space it out a little bit. And at the end, we want to loop back to say in running total. So we want to make sure that we have it starts with that and ends with that. So by the time it goes through these steps, it loops back into here. And so the key to making this a custom function is we're going to use this input. So this is going to be either user input or based on some value from another table. So we're going to reference X because right now I'm referencing just this table that I've got in Excel. I don't want to do that because that's basically hard coding it in there. And so instead I'm going to change this source to just a value of X. So whatever I input for X, that is going to be my source. I'm going to get rid of also this change type step just because, just in the case the formats are, the table looks a little bit different. I don't want to encounter any errors. And because I've done that, I also want to change this step here, the added index. It references that change type step. Instead, I'm just going to reference the source. Right, so it's going to circle back to here, which is going to point to that. Right, so now I've removed that step, but it's fine, and everything looks good. So no syntax errors. So I can hit done, and now what you'll notice is I've got this FX image icon here that tells me that this is a function. So I can also rename this query running total. So I'm using the same name over and over again, just to make it consistent. I don't want to call it something else within the function and then something else when I've renamed it outside the query. So now that function is ready to go. And so now I can use it in my tables. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this just to create another running total and to show you how we can do this. So I'm not going to do this added custom step because I'm not going to use this same formula that I've done. And I'm also going to get rid of the added index, and I'm just going to start with the source here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this group by button here, which is going to allow me to group my data based on whatever I want. So in this case, I want to group it based on salesperson, and I'm just going to call the column name data. Doesn't really matter. And I'm going to select all rows because I want to include everything. All I just want to do is create another table here. So I'm going to hit OK. And so now we've got the salesperson here and we've got the table. If I click on this table, you'll see it's essentially the same thing. I've just broken up that data into separate tables. So I've created one for John, one for Jane. I've got two separate tables. Now what I can do is I've got these different tables, and these are going to be used as inputs in my custom function. So now what I can do is go to the add column step again and select the option to invoke a custom function. So now my new column name, it can just be, let's say, cumulative. I could name it running total, but that doesn't really matter. As long as I mention the function query running total. So this is going to link up to that name that I created in there. So that's why it helps to, name that exactly what you want your query to represent. And for this X value, that's that input parameter that I created in my custom function. So it detects that in this running total function, there's an input for an X value, right? So I'm going to select this data field here. And this data field, so I can select either data or salesperson. Obviously, I'm going to select data because that contains that table. So that table is going to be the input for that function. So before I was referencing the table in the Excel workbook, this time I'm going to reference this table, which I've created here. So that's going to be used as my input in this function. So now that function is going to run through that same process for each of these tables. So I'm going to hit OK. And now, so we have this output, the cumulative field. So now if I click into here, we see it's done the same thing. It's created the index, it's done the running total for me. So it's done those same steps that I did previously, but now because I've got that custom function set up, I don't have to repeat those steps over and over again, because that running total is basically, that running total function is doing that for me. Now the last thing left is really just to open up these tables and expand them out. So I'm going to click on this button here with these arrows going in opposite directions. And now it's going to give me the option to expand all this. So I can expand all the fields that are in there, but I don't need them all, like index. I'm done with it. I don't need the salesperson. I've already got that in there. So all the other ones I'm going to keep. And I'm going to hit OK. Now I also don't need the data field anymore. So I'm going to right click, remove that. And so now let's take a look at our data. So we've got salesperson John here. So we can see it is incrementing properly. And look, here it resets as soon as we get to Jane. So even though we've got multiple reps, it knows to reset as soon as we get to Jane, right? So Jane's starting all over again. So now, what if we resorted this data just based on the date? So right now it's sorted by salesperson, but let's sort it by date. So we can sort ascending. So now we've got the dates going. Now you can see there's a mix of John and Jane mixed in together, right? But you can see that, John starts at 100, right? And then picks up again at 200. This jumps to 300. So it's not counting this previous value. So it's keeping them still separate. So it's still doing that running total, because again, this was already calculated in this previous step where we invoked the function. So we're not changing anything. These rows are always going to be linked together. These values are going to be linked together regardless of how we sort them. So it doesn't matter whether you want to organize them by salesperson or by the date, it's still going to save these values. And so you can see the cumulative values, whether you want to sort it by date or by sales rep, it doesn't matter anymore. And now when you're done, you can close and load, put it back into Excel, and you're done. So that's how you can set up running totals in Power Query. The key thing to remember is you want to sort your data first before you get into there, before you get it into Power Query, or as part of your first few steps, creating that index column and then doing that list.sum calculation, which uses the first n numbers based on that index function, based on the index column, and sums that all up. And then if you want to use that for multiple tables, such as if you got multiple criteria, whether you wanted to group by city, by salesperson, whatever the case may be, you just want to group your data first and then use that custom, invoke custom function, and then refer to that function so that you don't have to repeat these steps over and over again. And it's a lot easier to refer back to it. So that's a wrap on how to create running totals in Power Query. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please leave a like and make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.